Hello and welcome to Stacking Wisdom Podcast, episode number 4. We're your hosts, Artem and Alex, and today we're joined with Chef Eyal and Rebecca. She's a sommelier, and let's talk to you guys about the industry, the happenings, your business, but maybe you can give us a little bit of background about each other as well, and maybe, the background on being partners and how does that work for you guys. Which one of you wants to start?
Go ahead.
So we are basically, it's a partnership between a chef and sommelier, and that's our focus. Our focus is, of course, on being like a good sommelier and a good chef, but mainly on the relationship between them.
Okay.
And that's what we bring to clients, basically. If you look at restaurants, there are many chefs, there are many sommeliers, there isn't necessarily a connection between them.
Sure.
And you don't feel that connection when you dine at that space. What we do, we bring that connection to people's homes, right? So we celebrate that connection, and that's why the food and wine pairing is the focus of what that we do. And I think that's like one of our strongest things that we offer, one of them at least.
From what I can tell as well, it seems to be a little bit of a differentiation as well, because from what I've seen, there are tons of personal chefs, and they kind of come across with sort of allowing to bring that combination of wine pairings as well. But when you have somebody who's obviously a professional and a professional, and when you combine the two, it's almost like elevates the experience to almost like a different level, right? So can you tell us more about your beginnings and maybe how you both got into sort of this, the different industries that are sort of, the complementary to each other as well?
It's a good question. How did that happen?
How did that happen? Mostly mistakes, I think.
Yeah.
Mistakes and mishappenings. I mean, I came to Canada I applied in 2004 when there was a boom in the film industry.
Sure.
And I come from the film industry. But
Okay.
when I landed in 2007, the big recession hit.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was impossible to infiltrate the film industry. So I started cooking, washing dishes, and there I am.
And with your experience, you know what? It might sound like very humble beginnings, but at the same time, I know of a lot of chefs that have started in those same pathways too, right? And
this is the best way to start.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, and as my old chef used to say, if you don't respect the floor that you're cooking on, I can't teach you much. So you have to start from there. It's like all these, I see them, celebrities that started from, it's like, oh, I had a cooking blog and then now I'm a big chef. I'm like, cool, but this is very important. And it's like they don't make the self-cleaning dishes anymore, so yet, let's say. So you need to, and it teaches you how to, it's like changing your baby. It's also one of the processes to connect with the human. So all these things are part of our connection with what we do. For Rebecca, I think it was,
for me it also happened.
You needed a job.
Basically, we needed a job. We arrived to Canada and we were like, we worked in the film industry, and the film industry was like very
crushing.
Yeah, it was totally crushing,
Right.
and we realized it's totally unionized as well. And I was like, okay, I need to get cash. How do you get cash? You work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's that, and what it's like. Technically, it's like you're an immigrant. So what
you're an
jobs
immigrant.
do they offer to immigrants? Like,
Exactly.
As much as we want to celebrate the diversity of us in Canada, and we're a great country and we're beautiful, and I don't think I want to live anywhere else, but we're kind of still racist. So
I can definitely see. I think that maybe when you go outside of especially like big metropolitan cities, you can definitely feel it. And I'll tell you my experience too is I was born outside of Canada too, and I came to Canada when I was 16. So I've traveled the States a little bit, so I've had the exposure and living there. But at the same time, I can totally relate to some of the things that you're saying. I think that's I think they've even done a study. I think maybe 10 years ago where they've taken a resume of with a typical white name, and they've taken a resume with something like an Indian name.
That's my story.
And they forwarded it, and to see who would actually get a callback. And somebody with a typical British name got a lot more callbacks than the person with a typical, or not really typical, because it's atypical really, sounding name that's foreign to a Canadian ear. So I can totally understand that, but I think that's, in a sense, it's kind of like a motivator for you too, to kind of just keep fighting. And also I think coming from an experience of living abroad, that you always have that mentality to never sort of rely on anybody else, right? Never rely on the government, never rely on any kind of on police and like anybody else. It's always just you having that to prove yourself as a person that's gonna sort of fight, and having that background, and coming from outside of it, you've already experienced, the diversity so much more, I think, when you live abroad. And
of course. Well, when I arrived to Canada, I arrived with the name Rivka, which is a Hebrew name. It's exactly like Rebecca, it's just the way the Bible was translated.
Of course.
And when I just sent the resume, without me going to the restaurants, I heard nothing. When I changed it to Rebecca, suddenly you get calls back.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
you sound white enough.
Yeah. No, the thing is, like, so what do? So I decided to go by Rebecca, and with time people figure out my name is Rivka, and I try to change things from within, basically, and yes, I'm an immigrant. That said, it also works for my benefit as a sommelier, for sure. Like when it comes to other languages, when it comes to traveling, like there's so many sommeliers that I know that have never traveled around the world,
and that's a shame, really, because
it's a matter of culture.
Because
you need to
introducing
understand
cultures.
You introduce cultures, and if you're not exposed to different cultures, you will not understand in depth the different expressions of wines. So when you come from somewhere else, or from several different places, I come from several different backgrounds, then you're a very rich person, and that's what you can basically bring to the Canadians. So for me, eventually, like, it became something that I really could bank on, and I can really like get ahead because of it. But you gotta make it. Like, you gotta figure out what is that thing that is different about you that can also be problematic, but can also be very beneficial, and like take it in a good way and just make it happen, right? So
business advice number one.
Business advice number one is know what you
Find
have,
your
know what you do
uniqueness.
not have, and like make the best from your best qualities,
Try your best to
talent,
not be
your
like everybody
background.
else.
And I see it also when it comes to, I worked in some really high-end restaurants, and usually it's white men who work there, right? Older white men, and sometimes, and then there is the token woman, and then there is the person of color, one person of color, and they're usually the best servers. Because for them to get there, they need to work twice as hard as for a white man. But I also see that some of the clients, some of the customers really admire them, because it takes so much from you emotionally to tell yourself every morning when you wake up, I can do as much as a white person can do, even though no one believes me. And people feel it, and it inspires. So eventually that server made like better tips than anyone else. You know what I mean?
True,
because like he was like, this is who I am, and I'm good.
I think it's the landscape with the restaurant industry has changed quite a bit, though, and maybe in the last 10, 15 years, because I think that a lot of the back area of the restaurants is become predominantly like Hispanic background, right? Because there's so many immigrants that come from Mexico and that move up in the industry so well, right?
Now in Canada, it's mostly Hispanic is mostly in States.
Is it?
Like
Okay,
when you go here, it's Sri Lankans.
Sri Lankans, okay, yeah. So it's the Asians and like.
It's the people. It's like again, it's like when you listen to Trump's rhetoric, it's of the taking our jobs. They're not taking your jobs. You're not willing to do those jobs.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
How many white people do you know that like would wash dishes?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that it's for a lot of people that are having facing difficult times. It's one of the more easier maybe ways to sort of get into something like that. And then if they find themselves to be good, whether they have that talent maybe to cook, right, or if they have that salesmanship and the way that they can upsell somebody on a specific items, then that's where it sort of helps them to elevate their their skills, and it allows them to grow as a person too.
Yeah.
So you guys are obviously knew each other so before you even started in the industry, right?
Yeah,
So
we did,
but with the partnership itself, do you find that it's difficult to sort of be together as you know, as the two people, but also like in a relationship, but also having to work with each other like 24/7? How do you try to sort of balance that out and make it's you know, keep your sanity to some extent as well?
I'll disclaim my answer with a very, you'll never get anything straight from me. So I just don't believe in absolutes. I believe that everything, we're always drawn to like either this is evil, this is good, and I think that everything lives somewhere on like you know, middle platform. So the reason we did what we did is because I was working as a chef and she was working as a server, and sommelier and manager, and we barely saw each other. So the reason we started working together was the fact that we wanted to see each other, like at least 2-3 days a week. So yes, but on the other hand, yeah, it could be, again, it's like there's no break. I mean, you fight with your wife, you come here.
Sure.
And you have a break. I fight with my wife, and we go to work together. So it's like everything has pluses, minuses.
That said, I think it's actually quite, I don't know, I think for me it's quite easy to do that. Okay, there is a fight, let's say, and then immediately after that we have work. It's like cut, now it's work.
No, it's a professional
like,
you coming out, right?
Aside,
It's like you need to remember that I just had a fight with my wife.
Yeah,
now I'm with my son.
In the same way that you come to your office, you don't come with those problems.
Sure,
right?
of course.
So you do like, okay, cut, now I'm at work. It's the same.
Practice makes perfect.
I think
the more you understand.
I think as actually professionally, it's like, I don't know. I don't find it that difficult working, because like on the other hand, you really know each other. You know each other's weaknesses. There is nothing that we are hiding from each other. So everything is very transparent. Everything is very clear. It makes it very quick too. You know, you can actually move with your business much faster than with partners that you need to consider every word that you're saying. And
That's very true, because I think that's when you have friends and you try to partner up in the business, then it brings out all the dirty that you never ever see usually, right? And it sort of shows you true colors. And to some extent, I can totally agree that if you've kind of seen those not so good moments, sometimes it's easier to even like interact and maybe try to, like, you know, you give a little bit here, you give a little bit here, so it's almost like complementary,
why
right?
Did we come here today on a daily basis? Like, are we here to pamper your ego, or are we here to get this done? Sure. If we're here to get this done, and we both know that like there's no hurting each other, because how can I hurt them? It's my partner,
right? Yeah.
So that helps a lot.
I think also what attracts us to the hospitality industry is the sense of warmth of family. You know, like even when we worked in a restaurant, you create a small family basically. Less in big corporations. It's more like a fake family kind of thing. Many times.
You're supposed to like it.
Sorry, I know. Yeah. But in the smaller restaurant, you create a sense of family anyways, right? And even like when we have people working with us, they're part of the family. And then there is compassion inside, and that's what makes it like the boutique kind of feeling, and caring for each other. And if someone doesn't feel great, like everyone knows and everyone covers for them, you know. So I think that is something that people really miss in workplaces today, and they don't have it enough, because you're just like another body that does a job that can be replaced. Where if you think about it, traditionally it was like there were so many family-run businesses, and even like wineries. So many wineries are still family run, and not all of their kids are doing a great job, but it's their kids, you know, and they kind of like, they figure it out.
You
don't just like fire people
yeah.
because they're not a good fit for today, because they went through something personally. So I think in that sense, like actually working with your family is something great. Like, it keeps that warmth in your life.
could you tell our audience maybe like for those that don't know, like just about like your background of how you kind of grew? Because I believe you own your own restaurant now.
No, we own a private chef business.
Okay, right. But yeah, just how have you kind of like grown to like where you're at today? Like obviously you mentioned like how you got into this industry because you were forced to find a job in the kitchen, right? But like how did you work your way up to like the where you're at now, and like what got you into like creating the food and the wine and the cuisine that you specialize in? Like what was that whole like story like?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, fine. So I was I was trained in pastry, and she was running up at Somm. A few years, it's like I can't really keep a job because I have opinions and I'm not good at hiding them.
Well, that's what we want. We want opinions on the show today.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's like even in the workplace, I can't seem to keep my mouth shut when I have an opinion. So I was constantly moving from kitchen to kitchen. And at a certain point, we wanted to start something of our own, and we came up with the idea of starting to revolutionize the cake industry. And that didn't work and didn't click with the public because people don't want to spend. We wanted the idea was to take away the vanity and to bring in the extra flavor, texture, and stuff like that. But sadly, the cake industry is mostly weddings, and weddings are 100% about vanity. So. Not a good business model.
Well, I guess you learn and you grow, right? So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
and
how it is. Yeah.
during that time and making of that business, we started doing pop-up dinners.
okay.
Because I kind of missed the real kitchen because of the way I grew. And as we went, we discovered that we're good at that, and we developed into what we are doing now. So again, it's like because of the nature that I don't believe in mistakes, I don't believe in absolutes. So we just learned as we went. We learned what we are not supposed to do, and we learned what we are supposed to do, and we went to what we're doing now.
Yeah, I think it's important to fail to succeed, and to know.
No, it's not important to fail to succeed.
Well, it's just naturally.
It's important to succeed.
Yeah, it's important to succeed, but you
And
will
to acknowledge
usually,
failures.
but you will usually, you will make mistakes, and you will learn from your mistakes, and that's how you will succeed eventually.
Not necessarily. Sometimes you'll succeed instant.
Yeah,
It happens,
I know.
and I don't think that these are. But they're not like lesser businesses.
No, of course
I mean, if
not.
you're an instant success overnight, I don't think you'll be lesser than somebody that had like 20 mistakes.
But maybe you appreciate it a little bit
You might
less,
appreciate
right?
it.
So
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like privilege comes in so many shapes and colors.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you could be the most privileged. It's like you can be a cis-heterosexual white man and still check yourself. And you can be like the most oppressed person and not check yourself at all and walk this earth with some sort of privilege. So there's no absolute answer to that. That said, it's like, if you had rough climb to your success, you're more likely to.
I think it's also about like maybe being self-aware to some extent as well, right? Because if a person they can come from a really privileged background or rich background, but they can always just have like a good head on their shoulders and just kind of be very sensitive to and perceptive to the outside world, right? So and then you can have
self-awareness is a choice, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
I agree, but I think it's also maybe in the environment that you grew up in as well, right? To some extent.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Right.
I'm not sure because when it's like if politically if you deconstruct privilege,
sure,
acknowledging it and knowing it and starting to give it up is choice. I mean, there was a beautiful meme that I found on Facebook that said that being gay is not a choice, but being homophobic is. So it's exactly this. It's like acknowledging. It's like if we're looking at the three of us, we appear as white men. So for us to acknowledge that privilege, there's no incentive for us to do it. It's like we are at the height of the world. For us to acknowledge the existence of Rebecca, for that sake, there's no incentive for us. There's actually incentives not to, because once we acknowledge her, we open the market to 50% more
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
So it's not in our best interest to allow women in or people of color in. It's like it's in our best interest, quote unquote, to keep the privilege. But if we want a diverse society, if we want good society, if we want to be good people, if there's so many incentives to yes, but we need to see them, we need to check them, we need to decide that we want that. And then if you're looking at the political scene, it's like that's why Trump's on, because enough people are saying, oh no, we don't want that competition. It's like we'd rather have it like the old ways.
Sure, but I think it's also about the majority that maybe is in charge, and that's sometimes it might appear like as being unfair, but
Majority.
but no, I don't mean a majority in the sense that like majority of maybe the perception, but it's almost like people, they always want to sort of fit in with you know the very typical kind of perception of things, right? So
and we are tribal animals. We like to lynch
exactly right
together.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're all, like a lot of people there. It's just easier for them to kind of follow the pack,
Exactly.
and then just kind of follow in the steps instead of trying to maybe develop that individual, you know, person that you're trying to be, right? So that in itself, I think maybe is one of the, you know, things about our society maybe that we have is just that, right? So
at the end of the day, because it's like the only way for you to succeed in business as an individual, unless it's like if you go the corporate path, then yes, you need to conform.
Sure.
Because they want you to conform. But if you want to make a small business, if you want to be an independent person, it's like you need to be everything that they're not. Because if your idea is to, it's like I see three models. I see the startup technological model of I'll try to make something unique that Google, Microsoft, all these would just buy me out and cancel me. So that's entrepreneurship. The minute you're willing to part with your baby, I'm not willing to part with what I do. There's no way that somebody would come and buy me out because this is what I do. This is my life. But that's one way. And then you don't necessarily have to be unique. You have to find some sort of uniqueness, but a uniqueness that can be conformed. You can succeed in the corporate world and then make sure you conform because nobody's going to like you. And if you don't want these two paths, then make sure that you're unique, and all the fears that you have that your uniqueness would drive people away, that's the only reason people will come to you. Because for me to compete with all these corporations, they'll eat me alive.
Yeah, I think like you got to think like your customer. What is your customer missing that you have to give, basically? Like big corporations, unless you want to become a big corporation, you have the money for it and everything, that is one thing. If you are a small business, as Eyal said, you have to be unique. So you got to figure out what is it in you that you have to give professionally and also personally, because if you are a small business, you're selling your personality. And that's the thing. And you have to understand that you're selling your personality, and you got to make sure that you're selling something that is different and special.
And just like everything different, every other thing that is different, some people won't like it.
Some people will,
exactly.
just like with the cakes, right?
Well, it's like obviously the people that want the corporate schablonic thing, they'll go to that, right? So you are going to lose some of them.
Yeah, but in the cake situation, so that's a very interesting, because like there was something unique there with sugar work and things like that. But the problem is that the market is less into spending on sweets. There is a movement away of sugar, so you also have to understand like what is happening as a global movement. And you can't go against it because you're not going to win.
I think we failed not because of that. We failed because it was just a bad idea.
But I think it's also maybe
it's a matter of numbers. You got to figure out the
Sure.
numbers. If the numbers are not, because you know, how many cakes do I have to sell to make that profit? You know what I mean? But then as we started doing those collaborations between chef and sommelier, then suddenly with the wine profit, not wine, we don't make wine profit, but the sommelier profits, steaks, food, and the whole experience that you're basically selling, suddenly there is profit there. So there has to be, like, all of those things need to come together to have something that is successful.
Sure. And that actually brings me to another question that I kind of wanted to ask you is, you obviously, with your experience with, you know, with the the sweets industry. I still think that to some extent people want to give off a perception that they're trying to be healthy, but it's always like in the back of your mind, it's always like guilty pleasure, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna tell everybody that I'm eating salad, but I'm really gonna go and buy like a little cupcake somewhere and like actually, you know, snack on it, because it's, you know, it's one of those things that feeds your brain, and it's just like your brain is almost telling you like you need some
is
sugar.
Made from plants, and, and the wheat is a plant, so basically a cupcake is a salad.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, very
but I guess I want to kind of hear your perspective on the wine industry, and like how is that, you know, like sort of somewhat of a backlash against sugar. Does it affect the wine industry at all? Because technically wines are filled with sugars, really. If you think about it, right? So
North America has a very problematic relationship with food. Like that's how I see it. Very problematic.
I agree 100%.
Very unhealthy.
I like the word.
And the funny thing is, they think about what they chew, but not about what they drink. So everything that they drink, oh, that's probably okay. Cocktails, they don't think twice before they order a cocktail. Before they will order a dessert, then like, oh, sugar. It's kind of like, what do you think is in your cocktail? And there's no thought about natural ingredients, because the thing is, like, go to Paris. Like, there are like skinny, beautiful ladies that eat croissants there. Like, it's not something that you do not see. Here, like, people would not touch croissant because there is so much butter there. You know, like, there is good fat, there is not good fat, there is natural ingredients, not natural ingredients, and your body reacts differently to them. It's the same with wine. If your wine is like $8 a bottle from California, sorry California, but I'm talking about the $8 a bottle, like, there is a reason why it's $8 a bottle. And the same with food ingredients. If it's that cheap, there is something wrong there, because that doesn't make any sense.
One of my favorite questions to clients is, they usually come, they're usually families, and they usually have a kid, and I'm like, if I'll find you a deal. There's a teacher for your kid, for your 7-year-old. They're charging, it's a deal. They're taking $2 an hour. Would you hire that teacher? No. But the $2 a pound salmon, that's a yes, right? I mean, you do understand that that's what you're made out of.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that kind of exists in North America, is that people have, like you said, they have a very bad relationship with food.
Yeah.
And the fact that maybe
I like that's better than
problematic.
Okay.
I would up the ante with
I'm trying to be like moderate a little bit here, right? So I don't want to bash it. I think it's about convenience and just being always offered that very easy sort of fix.
It's tempting.
And I think coming from a background outside of Canada, it's always, you know, growing up with your grandparents cooking, or your mom cooking, or somebody else in your house cooking, and it's always like almost developing that love for food, and it's also it's almost like such a uniting thing, I think, for a lot of people too. That's
and people don't get it, that they look at the way we build homes today, and look at the way we used to build homes once upon a time. We used to have, the kitchen was the center of your life, and now the kitchen is the size of this table. Because nobody cooks, and nobody takes the time to enjoy food, and the sick relationship is in ingredients, is in convenience. It's also in, like, they think that you can make food in 5 minutes. And yes, you can, but there's a price. It's like everything comes with a price. And when you make food that is 5 minutes to make, the price is health. The price is everything else. Like, if we're looking in North America, we are the sickest society.
Oh, in terms of food relationship, absolutely, 100%.
It's the food itself, and it's the food relationship. It's the fact that everything's on the go. It's the fact that one of my family members traveled to Italy, and she had an espresso in one of the, like, on a mountain ledge somewhere, and she's like, "Can I have it to go?" And the shop owner looks at her and is like, "Go where?"
Where do you want to go?
Where do you want to go?
Like, you know,
Like, how long is it going to take you to drink an espresso? Like, you can't stop and like be here and
present in the
enjoy
moment.
this.
But that's the thing. Like, when we come to people's homes, suddenly you have all those smells because Eyal cooks like on the spot in front of them, and it brings up
And
those
Eyal
memories,
stops.
and it's something that we need. It's something that is naturally so comforting. And then suddenly someone really cooks with real ingredients and on the spot. It's not like catering where it comes to you already heated and was frozen like a few times and all of that. Like, it's actual, like, a person who is cooking there. So that is like one of the big things that we bring to people, where if you call like corporate or restaurants to do that in your place, you get it already cooked. Like, and then just plating,
sure.
the finish, they do it there. But it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't taste the same.
It's not a cultural experience, and that's
exactly.
what I bring. It's like part of there's so many things that are unique, right? It's like I think that if as a company all you have is like, this is my uniqueness, then
True.
A, I easily copy you, and B, it's not sustainable. It's really not sustainable because your uniqueness would be obsolete within a few years. I think that the biggest thing about what we do is that we bring culture and we stop. I deliberately sometimes would take extra 15 minutes to make the food just for them to be able to stop and think. It's like we need to be more appreciative of the food we have, of the product we have, of the abundance we have here in North America, and everything else. And that's where the sick relationship
there is
comes.
the educational aspect as well. Like, they have a chef and a sommelier in their home. It's a great opportunity to start. Like, we always start conversations about the ingredients, how it helps them. How can they get good ingredients? What is problematic? What is not? People have so many questions.
I mean, would you go to a school and put your kid there without meeting the teacher?
Definitely not. Of course, you'd want to at least know,
Have you met your butcher?
details about the curriculum.
Have you met the person who grows your cow?
No,
Exactly.
you haven't.
We used to.
Yeah, and that's actually
To me, that's the problem. It's like
Yeah.
you would actually tell me that you would never leave your kid in a school and not meet the person that educates them, but you would not meet the person that grows the food that they're made out of.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of brings you into the realization that I think that a lot of North American people don't really grasp is the fact that whatever you're consuming, you're putting in your body, is essentially what you become. And it's right there in the open. It's an open knowledge, right?
And that it was alive once upon a time.
Exactly.
And you should care for it, how it
For sure.
how it was raised. Like, it's
I mean,
it's
we
part
made
of
it
you.
steaks
You
now.
eat it. It's your responsibility. You know?
Unlike my grandfather and my uncle, they used to go hunting all the time.
Yeah.
And they always brought the respect. And like, for example, my grandfather, he taught me how to pluck a duck and how to take all the feathers off and how to fire it off and how to make sure that that you utilize and use all the ingredients
And
that come with it, right?
So is that you had the respect to the fact that something died to feed you.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm mediating between the extreme veganism to the all the like gluttony keto people that wants to kill their whole dinner. We love to think we're trying to beautify everything in a way. We're saying it's like the cow gave its life to feed you. Fuck no. The cow did not give its life.
You took it.
You murdered a cow to feed yourself.
Yeah.
And it's very, very respectful if you'll eat the whole cow and take care of it before it dies. Give it a decent life and don't kill more than you need. And because you're murdering animals to feed yourself, try to minimize that as well. I mean, you really don't need to be at the point that we are in North America right now. It's like we're looking at an average of 9 ounces of protein, animal protein, a day per person. And that's what we're supposed to consume a week.
Do you think that to some extent maybe it stems also from the fact that when you go to a chain restaurant or a big corporate restaurant, you get overloaded with salt, sugar, like all the main tastes as well.
We don't respect animals' lives anymore.
But I think it almost...
We got to the point that if once upon a time when you went to the butcher, you saw half a cow sitting like that, where do you see that? Now it's like, now I'm looking at the big corporate department stores. They would have like a little rib sitting there, and the butcher would cut a few ribs out of that. But I can count the amount of people that I know in my life that have never seen an actual living cow. Stood by a freaking cow. And I think a good field trip would be, it's like, show them what's happening. It's like it's natural and it's good. It's like people should be in a slaughterhouse once. It would change your meat consumption.
I agree.
I would love to see people starting to kill. Because I mean, to kill their food at least once. Like, and I'm not saying go crazy and kill a cow, because that would be very, very, very hard to achieve, especially with our health laws. But you can kill fish. Go fish, bang it with a rolling pin. It's like, take life. You will instantly respect it, because we're not geared to do that. And we disconnected totally. It's like all our foods now is coming vacuum packed. If not cooked, it's already like beautified to the, it's like, it's a tenderloin. And it's a beef tenderloin. I mean, beef belongs to a cow. And that cow was alive 27 days ago. I mean, it's very good to not dissociate. But on the other hand, once you dissociate, then I can start selling you, it's like, oh, do you want 1 kilo of tenderloin for yourself to eat today? You don't need that, sorry.
No, I think it comes with appreciation of utilizing the whole, the whole product, because essentially that's what it becomes, right? But at the same time, how do you sort of, because you seem very sure of yourself in terms of your convictions, maybe to some extent, but how do you sort of create that balance within yourself that, to some extent, knowing that you work in the industry that sort of allows things like this to go on, but at the same time, I guess that leads into a question again.
Well, I'm part of the solution.
Like how do you ensure that you source a specific type of protein? Do you ensure that this meat was was butchered from a cow within, like, say 24 hours, right? And then you make sure that you utilize it right away.
If you know the person that grows your cow, I do.
Exactly.
Good. Okay.
I do, and I will. Just like you would not put your kid in a school that you do TikTok to the teacher, I would not feed myself or my customers, because everything my customers eat, I do too, because I taste it right all along.
For sure.
I'm not gonna feed them with a cow that I did not personally speak to the person who grows it, didn't personally speak to the person that kills it, and didn't personally speak to the person that conveys it to me and butchers it and ages it and takes care of it. I mean, it's like, we need to know our food sources again.
I think that's an extremely important point that you bring up.
We made it to the point that we're saying we don't have time for this. I needed to start that's like, same argument I could have. It's like, you don't have time to meet the teacher of your kid.
So how do most people, I guess, then ensure that maybe they try to, stick to the same convictions to some extent as well?
Small businesses.
So support small businesses.
But
it's like, you don't buy product. You support people. So the likelihood that your neighborhood small butcher doesn't know the person that grows the cows that he is selling is very, very low. So I'm not saying go to the farms, because they're outside of the city and we need to choose, pick and choose our battles, right? But get to know the butcher. Talk to the person. And there are very simple answers that if you don't have the answers to, I know that you're a part of the problem. I mean, who grew the cow? Ask them if they don't know the name.
You probably shouldn't be shopping there. Then you can make your own conclusions for sure.
I mean, and there are levels of accountability. I mean, my butcher can tell you the name of the cow that you're eating.
That's incredible.
I'm working with a spice vendor from Saskatchewan. She can give you the plot number that the spices came from in every country. So, and again, this is what I do for a living, and this is my passion. So I'm not saying everybody should be as much as I am, but yes, developing a relationship with the people that grow your food,
Very
I
important.
think it's very, very cardinal. I think it's as important as knowing your kid's teacher.
And it comes with a price, because sometimes a person wants a certain cut, and we're like, no, we don't work like that. Like there are only a certain amount of animals, and at different times they get butchered. So we have different animals at different times.
Not just that. I'm not
Different
saying if you want a
parts.
tenderloin, and I ran out of tenderloin of that cow, I'm not going to kill a new cow for that.
Yeah, we need to use the other parts.
That's very true,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because we need to respect the animals. So there is a philosophy beyond everything. There is a philosophy there. So it comes to a situation where I need to talk with clients and be like, this is our philosophy. This is what we do, and you don't hire a certain cut. You hire a chef.
Sure.
And the chef is going to make something interesting out of different cuts. And you need to put your trust. You put your trust in an artist. And for some people it's hard, but then they're very proud of themselves because, you know.
They gave you that trust, and then
They gave you that
and
trust.
in turn
yeah,
they
yeah.
received
And
something
it's the same with vegetables,
spectacular, right?
Because it's very important to have the right balance because between protein and vegetables, especially when it comes to 13-course meal, 7-course meal that we do, and
Even
wine
a 2-course
pairings.
meal, it's like you don't need that much animal
Yeah,
protein. I'm sorry.
And,
it's
and
like,
you're not
it's
going to
not
feel
about
that
us.
great. And also you're not going to feel that great physically after that. And I know everyone wants to have like, oh, let's only have stars on the menu, so all animals. And it's like, a person doesn't need to eat so many animals. It's actually not good for you. And we passed that philosophy, and to be honest, like I think it's quite successful so far. Like I barely had any people who said like, "Oh, we're gonna move to someone else because of that." They're like, "Okay, we trust you. You know what you're doing," and then we bring extra education at the evening itself, and they get something different. And that's the thing.
And everything's like our inhumanity, our consumption, all that's like it translates to economy, it translates to the way we can run small businesses.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's a support system that when we choose to comply to the idea of, oh, I don't have time for this. When we comply, because the only people that would stop it is us. The only way to make a revolution is from the people, not from
I agree. It starts with small changes from people trying to apply them, and then as it becomes almost like a movement, it grows into that.
The world
and it tells the big corporations, no, this is what the consumer wants, right? And then I was gonna that actually leads me to another question. Going back to vegetables, I think that's maybe people just have this misperception, specifically maybe to some extent maybe to blame the Americans, and by Americans I mean United States, by having these humongous portion sizes, right? Because if you go to Europe, your typical portion sizes are so much smaller. And having myself lived in like Netherlands for a year and studied there, when I came back I was just shocked. Because I remember, even if I'd say I bought like even like a smaller steak, and when I came to the store here, the portion sizes are just humongous, right?
Because mind you, the way we farm here, we get much bigger cows.
Sure, of course.
So for me to give you a tenderloin, it's like if you'll buy a cow from big agriculture down in Brazil and South America, what you're getting from like the department stores, they grow them that way. They grow them that giant. It's like it's profit. It's like once you stop thinking about animal welfare, once you stop thinking about your health, once you stop thinking about anything but money, then you're starting to grow diseased cows. And
well, that's where Matt Cow started as well, right?
It's very easy for us
So
to
things
be
like that.
misinformed by choice, right? It's like if you're asking people about deforestation, what's the main reason? And people say, oh no, we need to use less paper. Like, are you shitting me? Like, where is that even coming from? It's like the biggest deforestation that's happening right now is for the meat industry. We're cutting trees to grow more cows as if we need more cows. And that's the major pollutant as well. It's like
and greenhouse gases
exactly.
too, but which nobody ever talks about. That they're,
Of course, because
Really
that's a strong giant lobby.
yeah, exactly.
That does things the same way in the States that they did with tobacco and other things. But again, the revolution would come from us saying, I want to be informed. I don't want to buy this. Size doesn't matter. I don't need a half a kilo steak for myself because I'm human. I'm not a lion. And you know, it's all the mystification, over glorification, and the bliss of I'm not accountable. I'm not killing a cow. I'm just eating a steak. And like, yeah, you're killing a cow.
I think the portion size is what was leading me into the question with vegetables, because there's so much mass production, and hence because of that there's so much pesticide used and so many additional modifications to that are happening to the veggies and stuff like that, that people don't really even know like what a real zucchini might taste like or what a real tomato tastes like. And I think that there's not enough education maybe about the soil, right, and how it's grown and how often it's used, and when it's drained of nutrients completely too, and how that affects the taste of things too, and our surroundings, the air, the water, the pollution, everything that's happening, right? So
and
there's
again,
so many things that take into
we
account.
love absolutes, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying, oh, you want to grow less cows? Fine, let's be vegan. Now, if the whole population of the world's moved to veganism, we're talking about a new problem, and it's easy to not see it and to to say, oh, now we'll be righteous and great and we won't torture animals. Great, but now you will start having annuals and plants that don't grow roots. You'll spray a lot to grow everything. There'll be no animals eating the all the pests and everything, because there's no reason for me to bring in a herd of cows if I'm not killing them to feed somebody. So I'm not going to grow them, because at the end of the day, it is a business. So I'm going to grow annuals and I'm going to spray the field, and because nothing holds to the ground, rain's going to take it to our rivers, and then you'll have, it's like you're seeing that in down by Florida, when there's like a whole pocket of sea that doesn't grow anything, and that's partly the manure of animals, but also partly a lot of pesticides that are running from agriculture that is washed because nothing is holding to the ground, because everything is annual.
Do you think it's because we're almost disturbing the natural cycle of things too?
Of course. It's because we are the first species, and that is the problem. We are the only species that does not regulate. We keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And
excesses, right?
When I talked, like I had a discussion with my uncle about it. It's like, well, if we have less than 2 kids a family, that's negative growth. And I'm like, good. That's exactly what we need. There's too many humans.
That's true.
We're destroying. It's like we're not thinking, and animals are not thinking about this, but animals do that naturally. They self-regulate their amounts. Like, you won't see there's not enough to support this amount of lions, because once there's too many lions would start dying, gazelles would start to be more, and then more lions. Like, it's self-regulating, but humans don't self-regulate at all. It's like we keep going and going, and the world's trying to get rid of us. Tried it a few times, and we're defying it. So we will get to the point that it's like we are destroying this thing at this point.
I think there's lots of uninhabited land though, and I think that the problem is also that we're always trying to almost stick like a herd together. And I think if we spread out people a lot more across this planet,
but then we need to rethink contribution, and society.
I think it's
leadership.
a lot of global questions for sure.
I mean, if we want to stay capitalist, I want to see you.
So that brings me to another question too. Is how do you, like, I get what you're trying to do, and in terms of maybe almost not really even educating people, but telling them, listen, just trust us. This is what we're doing. This is how we're professional in our fields. Allow us to present the experience to you, right? But at the same time, if you come into contact with a client that maybe you have different, political views, or whether it be different opinions of food or some stuff like that, when do you know for yourself, when do you tell your conscience, I don't want to work with this person, or like when do you cut off that business?
I always want to work with that
but
person.
at the same time, where do you find that balance for yourself? Because it's almost like if you believe in something strongly enough, especially maybe let's say like food, right? And if the person is very pushy and they're very opinionated and they're trying to push that onto you, when do you know to cut it off, and when do you know to just kind of put your head down and you just keep working, kind of thing, right? Because even though you're working for yourself, you're still finding that you're working for somebody else because you're working for a client, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's like a partnership.
how do you find that medium, that kind of thing?
A beautiful quote from one of sketchy personality, Charlie Trotter, who was a big chef and a great contributor to the world in culinary, but then wasn't that straight when it comes to labor and other things. He said that the customer is always right. Sorry, the customer is rarely right, but the customer also pays the bill.
The customer is always a customer.
So, at the end of the day, it's like we do get to the point sometimes if we have to fire a client because it's so far-fetched from what I'm willing to do. That said, I would try to convince the client, and in a lot of cases I would say, well, I believe this is wrong. I hope you'll trust me, but if not, this is what you're getting. I'm fine. I mean, even if a client wants, like, the biggest thing for me is that I tell stories through food. And when they would come to me and say, oh, I'm not in love with this dish, I'm like, okay, let's unpack the story of, say, Cinderella. Do you like the evil mother? The answer would be no. Okay, good, you're a sane human. Can we have the story without the evil mother? Can we make her nicer? I mean, would the story still work? So we need the evil mother. We need her as a character to be there because she's cardinal to the story. Okay, that's why we need this dish. And I'm not saying this is a disgusting dish, but this dish, it's like to be in like 13 points of catharsis. It's horrible. It's a horrible state to be in.
Like, and that's what you usually get in tastings. Yeah.
Plus, how do I, if I'm deconstructing storytelling and let's say film, in Terminator, how do you know that Schwarzenegger is that strong? If I had all the cast would be as like muscular and buff as he is, you wouldn't. But when I face him, the big face-off is with a kind of strong character and everything, mentally and everything, but the build is like Alex's, then I go, oh, Schwarzenegger is so muscular. I need the reference, right? So in order for you to really enjoy the beef dish, I need something that contrasts it in a way as well. So that's the art of telling a story. And I try for them to trust me. Sometimes they don't, and in most cases it's like, oh, I didn't trust you this time, next dinner we'll let you just do whatever, because I get what you said. So I do believe in relationships, right? It's like I don't want to lose clients, not just for the money, but also because I think I can get to them.
Sometimes we get to them.
And sometimes you don't, and it's okay. It's like, even if I got to them on some level, even if I pushed one agenda, even if I touched them in one way or another, it's like, it's good.
So who are like most of your clients? Like I believe you said earlier families, but are they like families with young children? And like, because like, for me, like I would think just like those are probably the ones that would have the most time constraints. But yeah, just could you tell us maybe a little bit about like your clientele?
And I think that they would have the most resistance too, because you're trying to fit kids something that they might have not tried before. Or something like that.
That's true.
Like Chef and Somm, so
usually like the wine is also like such a big thing. So usually, and sometimes people ask us, "Oh, can you do something for the kids?" And then I give them options. I'm like, it's usually more of a grown-up experience, unless your kids. Some kids are extreme foodies, and like we actually had an event where it was 9 grown-ups and 6 kids. The grown-ups went all wild and were like talking about anything else. The kids were fascinated about the food and talked about the food the whole evening, asking the chef questions and everything. So you never know, right?
Of course.
But generally speaking, especially if these are young kids, like what we recommend is, okay, why don't you put them asleep? and then we'll start the dinner, like at 8 o'clock,
Sure.
or closer to 9 o'clock, and then we can start the dinner or find a solution, because it is a longer experience, and it's usually more for
It's a 3-4
And-
hours.
grown-ups, yeah.
And that past experience that you've had, did you guys have to make different dishes for the kids too, or was it
Sometimes.
was it all the same?
It depends. Sometimes we just sometimes chef just simplifies it for them, makes it less like, with weird ingredients or things that are.
But on the other hand,
But it
when the
depends on the
flowers,
kids.
the flavors to speak for
mind
themselves
that
too.
kids
so.
feed off
Their
your
parents.
emotional reaction.
Exactly.
So if you don't see that as weird,
Exactly.
they don't see that as weird.
Yeah.
They're absolutely mirroring your.
Depends on their
Behavior.
parents a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, it really depends on their parents. But generally speaking, like, a lot of our dinners are very special celebrations of 20 years anniversary or birthdays, things that are connected to family, but to the grown-up part of the family. So you
You'd
have
usually like order a pizza for the kids and
Yeah,
put them to bed
like,
after.
Yeah.
Because also
Yeah.
the kids won't have the attention span to sit there and go through a 4-hour food talks and wine and all that.
Yeah.
The attention spans, especially in North America,
Yeah,
very
exactly.
very short. And
I think even in
dedicating
Europe,
but
It's
Yeah.
a big thing.
yeah.
Like it's
I
it's
think
long.
At that point, people call us because it's us. Because they know we are doing something very, very different, and we are very different in our scene, and they heard about us from someone else. At this point, like, even when there is a
Business advice number
even
2.
when there is a even when there is a disagreement, they know our reputation, and we keep our reputation also through really insisting on explaining to the client what we are doing, and really having them understand that it's like you walk in a museum. If the artist painted those pictures because they knew that people are going to love it, you're going to sense it.
Oh, of
And
course.
that's not going to be art. It's not going to be an expression of the artist. When you're going to walk in a museum and see different pictures of that artist and certain evolution, then you'll get a story, you'll get an experience.
But
So that's
I
the
agree
same
with
as
you.
on
Yeah.
the dinners. So I basically always try to tell them, like, you hire a chef, you hire an artist, let them walk you through it. Certain things you're gonna love more than others, but you'll go through an experience more than anything else.
And that actually leads me to the question about always having that being in that sort of state of mind of like loving and actually enjoying the preparation and the cooking process, because it definitely translates into food and then the way
Yes,
it tastes.
exactly.
How do you ensure that you yourself personally are sort of set in that state of mind? Do you like have any specific thing that you like, rituals or whatever, whether it be like concentrating or meditating or stuff like that, that allows you to kind of get into that zone? Like what process do you go through?
When I'll get out of it, I'll tell you if I need to do something. I've been in it for.
It's automatic. It's just a switch that just
like,
comes
that's
out.
What I love. That's what I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that is the enemy of a small business or anything is like when you lose the passion.
Yeah.
And if you lost the passion, I think there's so much to do in the world. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
Just do something else if you don't like it. I don't like suffering.
I think it's also about evolution and always being able to reinvent yourself too sometimes, right?
Exactly.
To adapt.
To adapt.
Change, to find something.
But
that
also, like
do.
you said, you utilizing some of the skills that you might have, and utilizing that for your benefit too, right? So
And always change. Don't be afraid of changing things, even though you think, oh, that's what is already successful. It doesn't matter if your passion is not there anymore because you feel like you start repeating yourself. Then like move ahead, change. Like trust the fact that people will call you because it's you, and that's a big difference between us and corporations, because it's us. Like they call us because of the passion more than anything else. The passion, the knowledge, the experience. These are things that are not going to disappear. It doesn't matter if we change our concept.
Well, especially if that's your marketing, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
our biggest marketing strategy right now, and for the past 3 years, is word of mouth.
Yeah.
So the minute if I come to your home and I relay that passion to you, and I relay that this is what matters, the slowdown, the passion, the connectivity, the moment, all that, then that's what you transfer to the next person that comes to me. On the other hand, it's like if I'm a big corporation, that's the last thing I need, because then I need to trust individuals,
yeah.
and it's like, so I want to be like, you're getting this box.
Yeah.
So as a small business, the biggest thing would be, it's like, drop the boxes. It's like, be out of them, because they are the thing that's going to sell. It's like, there's no way you can compete.
And how do you? I'm sure that you can't always be 100%, and especially with you, to some extent being a one-man show because you're in the kitchen, right? Have you had any off days, and how were you able to recover from that, or like be able to sort of?
Nobody knows, right? It's like the only person that knows anything is in front of you. So
Nobody
bullet
knows.
And you do it. It's like nobody knows what was my plan, and even if today I woke up without the passion for it, sometimes the minute I'll get into it, I'll get in the mood. Sometimes I won't, and you're paying me, so
The difference, that's being a professional, right?
That's being that's a different.
Well, that's what being in business is for,
put
right?
yourself there. You put yourself in that place. It doesn't matter what, because you're a professional. Otherwise, you're an amateur, right? That's the difference.
Like the big difference would be that we can fake it. But
And I know nobody's saying you are. I'm just trying to kind of.
You start faking it, and then you make it already. Like as soon as you step into it, or sometimes you just need a distraction, like. To talk to a friend about something totally different, and then it lifts your spirit a little bit, and then you're ready for it.
Sure.
So there are many ways to.
Well, and I think that even my flat line is still very, very unique.
No one would know.
Strong. Nobody would know.
Even days that are like a little bit down, no one will know.
I think once you've put in enough time into it,
exactly.
it almost comes natural, right? It's almost like a second nature, and I get that. I'm just trying to kind of. Not really fish, but sort of get a grasp of how do you deal with difficult and or stressful situations. Because sometimes your mind can be off too, right? Because you can't always be 100%. So I think improvisation might be something that plays into effect, but also I think experience, obviously, over time.
There's a way of meditating and other things, but at the end of the day, understanding that, like, if you
just kind of get into that zone, and you just
you have to do something, and you strive to get to that inspiration, but if it doesn't come, it's fine, it's okay. It's like, as long as you're giving people what they paid for.
And sometimes focusing on the simple things, on the technicalities, because if you come from the bottom, and that's the amazing thing, like, because we come from like really the bottom. If you come from the bottom, you love the simple things of your job. Like right now, there are like new sommeliers, and they're like, so what? All I'm gonna do is like pour wine for people, and that's it. And it's like,
that's what you do.
What do you think you're gonna do? And like, second, this is a privilege. Like, working with wine is a privilege, period. And the fact that you can pour it for people and many times taste it yourself and get educated about it, or educate other people, like, this is amazing. So you need to enjoy that giving that juice. It's good juice, especially sharing that, like that giving aspect. That's the real hospitality. That's the heart of the thing. That's why I see a big difference between sommeliers that just went and did some papers and sommeliers that actually started as like bussers, servers, because they have the hospitality gene in them. Because that's what you basically do. You want to give to people, and that's the movement.
It's
so if you love the simple things,
life,
you go back to those simple things, and you get joy from it. Because it's your nature, and then
the less pragmatic you are, and the less that you're set in some certain courses, the better you are in life, not even in business, in everything. I mean, if you're going to med school and you have the absolute one singular dream of being a brain surgeon, how many brain surgeons do we need? I mean, the chances that you'll be in general practitioner,
pretty high.
We kind of need more of those. Now, if you really see it as torture to be that, wrong profession. And I don't see that's what I'm missing in schools. It's like when I see culinary schools, I see the teachers, yes, saying that cooking is a privilege and all that, and all those like beautiful slogans that I preach for, and I want them. But at the end of the day, if you are not going to enjoy being the lowest chain in the kitchen, as like the lowest chain cook in there, I'm not sure it's the right profession, because in every kitchen we need one chef. That's it.
So it's almost like being humble in your profession, right?
Enjoying it, enjoying it. It's like I'm not sure it's humility. It's like it's do you enjoy the job itself? Because the likelihood that you won't be in the highest positions of management is higher, because again, it's like in every profession we need one manager and many workers. So if you're getting into it and you don't want to be the worker, you will suffer as the worker. You're in the wrong profession. So business advice number 3.4, get into something you care for, you like, something that you can see yourself being the worker in, because the likelihood that you won't make it is giant. Giant.
To speak a little bit more maybe about the sommelier end of things, because I think the chefs has been popularized so much, and maybe that spectrum of the wine, the complementary thing is not really maybe as well known to the masses.
Yeah.
And with also, just speaking from my own experience, I've worked with this wine grower in Ontario, in the Niagara region, and we were studying. When I was in school, I was studying the process of manufacturing and production, and we came in and we've just approached them, and just by chance we were able to gain a lot of insight as to, I guess, all the different aspects of production as well. And one of the most, I guess, interesting and probably shocking things that I've learned was that the way that the grapes are produced, a lot of the times they'll combine little bugs, ladybirds, and everything else, and how that in itself affects the taste of the wine, and how that in itself is essentially what the mass-produced product is, and how there's actually wine out there that's has the different type of body. It depends on where it's grown and things that sort of play into that as well. Maybe you can elaborate more, to our listeners as to the state of the industry and how it is, and what is it that actually you're getting sometimes when you're getting good quality wines, right? So maybe you can talk about that.
I think it goes down to knowing the people as well. The same as knowing the butcher. Know your winemaker. Meet them in person and see the integrity, and see how much they care beyond just the numbers of profit. Because the more natural you go, the more it costs you, but the better it is for Earth. And many times the quality is going to be even better. And
consistency is going.
And it's a philosophy as well. It's a philosophy as well, because if you go to Europe, for example, where you have more natural wine, and I'm not talking about having the label of natural wine, but naturally they have a practice that is biodynamic, because that's how it have been passed for generations and generations. You have sometimes 14 generations behind them. No, they're not going to change those things. That's part of their heritage. That's more important than money. It's more important than anything. They will actually die for it.
I bet, especially if it's been 14 generations in the family. Right?
So actually, like, for example, like people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I get headaches from wine," and I'm like, "Do you try wines from France?" "Oh, not so much. I drink mainly from these specific regions." And I'm like, "Yeah, because there is a philosophy to the winemaker. If the winemaker sees themselves as like at the top of the pyramid, and the whole world and animals and plants are beyond them, and they can do whatever they basically want, then it's one approach. If they see themselves as part of the circle of life, they're important, animals are important, and we all influence each other, then the way they practice in the vineyard is going to be the same. So if they care for the animals in the vineyard, they care for them. If they don't, if they see only their profit, you're going to taste the difference.
And feel the difference.
It's almost like a chef putting in passion into preparation process. It's almost the same.
The chef is the sum of ingredients as well. It's like it's and what you see on TV a lot is like pedestals for ego.
Oh yeah.
Where at the end, all I am is I use product. So yes, there is the aspect. I mean, if all we're looking at is tasty, and that's what we glorify so much, I can take 4 cans and make it tasty. It's like Not the big deal. Do I have something to say? Am I bringing something else to the table? I mean, it's like tasty is a prerequisite. Obviously, it's like if you become I hear like discussions about chefs like the food is so tasty, the food is so tasty. Okay, do you hear that on cab drives? For that sake, oh, that cab driver is very good. He always gets me to the right address. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? It's like, would you hire a cab driver that doesn't get you to the right
So it's almost like you're doing your profession, and that's what you should be delivering, and it's almost like you're getting praised for it. I hear what you're saying.
I mean, the food is so tasty. Yeah, the cab driver took me to the right place. Oh, yeah. I don't think I would talk about the cab driver that doesn't take me to the right place. Was there extra value? Was the cab smelling nice? Was he asking me if I like the music? If I'm cold, hot? It's like, was there extra service? That one I'll talk about. But the actual delivery, it's like, So tasty food, yes, it's like that's what we do, obviously. But what else am I bringing? And the same would go in wine. It's like, if we're looking, there are certain regions on earth for wine that I've never tasted bad wine from them. But what I'm selling is the art in the bottle, the family story, the passion of the winemaker, the story of the winemaker, the story of the wine, the story of the vineyard, the history, and that's loaded, and it has a value in taste.
Yeah, and the great thing about what that I do is that I get to travel around the world and meet some of those winemakers as well. So when I come to clients with bottles, they became my friends, basically. So it's like you talking about your friends, I talk about them and what they do, which I think brings that something very, very special about it. And there is a reason why I choose those specific bottles and not other bottles. Most of the bottles that I bring to clients, they have never tasted them before. So in that sense, it's very, very different than the work in a restaurant. In a restaurant, you mainly sell bottles that people know already. There is a small percentage of flexibility there. Sometimes you have clients that, let you kind of walk you through the cellar and give you something interesting, but it's quite rare.
But it's also a matter of trust there, right?
It's and that's the thing. It's a
for
matter
me
of
to
trust.
walk into a restaurant and tell you, oh no, just surprise me.
But that's the
that
thing.
means that I'm trusting you.
Yeah.
And why would I trust you if most restaurants are corporations?
But and that's the thing. So there are several sommeliers. You always have a different sommelier, so you don't know what the palate of that sommelier is. You don't know if they just left school like a few months ago or whatever. But when it comes to us, like I write about wine. So they already know what I know, where I travel, because I expose that on social media. And that's why if you are self-employed, if you have your own company, you have to promote yourself as an individual, basically, in any way that you can. If you make money of it as an extra or you do not, it doesn't matter, because people will know you by the fact that you are there and you are active all the time. So like social media exposure, you as a person who travels the world, taste wines with winemakers, talk about it and everything, that's what brings your reputation as a sommelier up.
And your life.
And your life. And
your life, everything in your life.
And like, because of that, our clientele, they let me bring whatever I want, basically. And that's the fun part, so I can never get bored because I can always bring something different, and keep my passion up. And it's quite similar with Eyal's food. We don't have set menus. And people ask me, just send me samples. I'm like, we don't work like that. They go to corporations. They will give you set menus. They only have 4.
Sure.
They will... We do not do
the little bit more adventurous menu, the very standard menu.
We do not
like
do it because of many reasons. Also because you want something with passion. Something with passion is constantly changing. Except for the fact that they always give you consistency of who they truly are. But the ingredients will change, everything will change. Yeah, exactly, and that's why it is.
How do you, obviously you must have some sort of an evolution of taste as well with wines though, right? So how does that affect maybe him in his preparation of his food as well? Or how do you find that balance always, right? So, because I mean, obviously there always has to be some sort of a progression as well, right? Well, and you as a professional and as as a specialist in this kind of field, right? So
well, we work as
a cohesive unit.
So even when I go to not to every tasting, but to many tastings, I will go with chef. So we are both together in everything, basically, right? Like we each do our thing, but
we're both there to protect our perspective, like field. I represent the food, she represents the wine. But again, at the end of the day, and I had that discussion with a few restaurateurs, like at the end of the day, when somebody comes into the restaurant, what they remember is the experience. So if you don't care about any aspect of the experience, you're saying, oh, I'm the chef, I only care about the food. I'm like, okay, fine. But mind you, the customer doesn't remember that. I mean, they would remember that the food was spectacular, let's say. But there is an experience that they're going through, and that's what you sell. So, wider view.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think that it's sometimes you can have a really memorable moment in the most of unexpected places, and it does sort of create maybe like a completely different perspective or memory for you as well. Whereas you can go into like something that you almost like expect to have like the quality, and sometimes it can be a completely different experience from that too, right? So
exactly, and it's also the moment and the creation of whatever. It's like if you will have a dinner in certain restaurant with, say, somebody that you do like, and then 2 weeks later you'll have the same food in the same restaurant that is done absolutely same recipe, manufactured corporation that doesn't taste different, but you'd have a date that is not successful and you hate the person that is far from you, the food would taste different. And that's why I come not set. That's why I change according to, it's like I have a plan, I wrote a menu for you, but I need to get into the atmosphere and see where I am, and then change accordingly. Again, it's like that's what I sell. What I sell is the reaction, instead of like, this is this.
You gotta be also very intuitive, because like they have to walk through an amazing experience, and sometimes if your host, for example, or someone else doesn't feel great, great, I have my lecture about the wine, Eyal has the food, but if the person is not in a good mood, that's the first thing you need to fix.
That's true. Yeah.
So you gotta always figure out, okay, what am I attacking for the whole picture, and put yourself outside of it, because the problem is in our industry as chefs and sommeliers, there is a reason why they do not collaborate. Because usually chefs have big egos and sommeliers have big egos as well, and that's why they don't like working together, because they compete on egos. But the bottom line is the whole experience and how it comes together. How it is the most important, but how it actually all comes together, that's what's going to sell you as a company. So it's always like looking at it globally as like, yes, I'm a sommelier, yes, I'm a chef, but I'm first and foremost, like, I'm the owner of this company, you know, and of this business, and everything together needs to work. That's the most important thing. So it's kind of like doing that zoom out all the time.
And that's why I found your concept very interesting and different, because I don't really typically see that, right?
Yeah.
Where the two collaborate, and I think that obviously it's very complementary that the two of you have known each other for so long that it almost balances each other out. One last quick question that I wanted to touch base on specifically about the chef part was, with you it's a little bit more of a challenge because the food usually has a lot shorter of a shelf life, whereas with wine it can be barreled, it can be stored for a prolonged period of time. How do you, obviously you get affected by seasonal food and things that are brought in. How do you find it challenging more so maybe in wintertime, and being able to find certain things?
2019 we have airplanes.
No, for sure, but then how do you keep in touch with the people that have grown those vegetables? Because if you follow in the footsteps of what you were saying, right? How would it not be a lot more challenging to you then?
It is.
Right? So
it is, to a certain extent. I can, and I lose some touch with some vegetables, obviously. Again, it's like I trust I put my trust in the person that chooses the vegetables for the store. He trusts the other chain. I try to know as many people in the chain. I mean, when we're talking about, let's say, animals, I know the farmers, but I go there once every year or two.
Sure.
My butcher goes there every week, maybe even twice a week. So I trust my relationship, my real strong relationship is with the butcher, and I just want to see at least who are the people that he chooses. But beyond that, I can't micromanage, and that's something
for sure, yeah.
we love having like full control on everything. I mean, all those farms are 4 hours away from Toronto. I'm not doing that travel every day. And yeah, so it's like when I'm talking vegetables in the winter, I'm looking at things that I did do preservation on. So I do pickle things and dry things. I kind of lose touch with some of them on the fact that I know the person that chose those vegetables from abroad, but they're coming from somewhere.
So it's almost like you put your trust in your supplier
and
to deliver for you what it is that you have specific, I guess, set out expectations for him for, right? So
and there's a way to know that. It's like, right? It's like when I meet a lot of my suppliers, I'm like, I would call them. I'm like, how's this product that I saw on your website? And like, no, you're not gonna like it. They know what I want. They know my standards. So you get to the point that you create that relationship, and that's why I want to invest in knowing people. Sure. Because then they would give me what I want and it would save me time.
Can you just touch quickly base on how, like, what was the inspiration, I guess, behind the types of cuisine that you prepare and the types of wines, and like where do you source them from? Just to kind of give our listeners just a little bit of a taste of what it is that they can expect maybe out of like a service like yours, right? And the type of maybe, I mean, obviously to some extent maybe it's affected by some of your travels as well, right? So whether it be like to Middle East or somewhere else, or if you had traveled to France, right? Obviously
the big question would be, how do you see cuisine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do you stop the time?
Yeah.
So it's like and that's a perception that we kind of skewed a bit in, especially in North America. Let's deconstruct the simplest of dishes, rice pudding. What cuisine is it?
So probably just like modern, not really even modern. It's just like every day, really.
So now it depends on where you stop the clock, because it's rice pudding. Rice pudding came to North America via France, Italy.
Sure.
France, Italy. In France, it would be risole, and in Italy, it would be budino de rizzo. Now, if you stop the clock there, but if you don't want to stop the clock there and you want to look at the nativity of rice originates in China. So without Marco Polo, we wouldn't have. So maybe it's Chinese cuisine.
For sure.
So if you want to put cuisine in paradigms of ingredients, then it's a problematic concept.
For sure.
So it's like my cuisine is technique and approach. So I could take ingredients from Japan, China, and Iran and incorporate them into one dish. So that's not the uniqueness is my approach. They hire an approach, and the technique. The technique is mostly coming from French cuisine and from my background in the Middle East. When it comes to wines, they trust palate, because I don't think you don't have countries of favorism.
No, I mean, I always stay open to new regions and to exploring new regions. You know, starting to be wines from Armenia and all kind of spaces. You never know. Okay. And the whole idea is really to be open and stay open. And sometimes from like odd regions, you get great values, right? And so it can come from anywhere. Basically, it can be local as well. I go by the winemakers. If I believe that they're doing something that is honest and you can taste it, I mean, I can taste it at this stage. If they're doing something that is honest, if there is a great story there, then by all means, you know, so all of these together, and I choose those wines, and then as soon as we finalize the menu with the client, then we just do pairings. So I think the focus is going to be on the pairing, how it goes with those specific dishes more than anything else. And it can be a situation where like 40% are going to be French and the rest are going to be from somewhere else. But it doesn't matter to me, because I'm not looking to give you like bottles from all over the world in one menu. I'm looking to give you, my focus is the food and the wine pairing, what we are saying in that basic story. So yeah,
I agree that it's probably not unfair to to try to label things, especially with today's world being so intertwined and being so global, but at the same time yet so local. Kind of, I don't want to go back to that analogy, but it kind of is, right, to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we try to support local as much as we can. You know, there are limitations when it comes to local, and we need to be aware of it. And like finding a bottle of $600 a bottle local, it doesn't really exist. And if it exists,
it's not good.
It doesn't. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Not on the palate and not history-wise.
I mean, I'm paying you $600 for heritage and something. Like
yeah,
this country
there has to be something there.
Years old.
There has to be something there. There has to be a reason why it's that expensive, and it's not only the palate. You know, otherwise it would be $100 or $80. So that is something that locally we cannot do, and like obviously it is a great fit for me and my concept and for my client to taste those spectacular wines from around the world. So I'm not interested in like limiting myself in that sense. That said, when I do travel to Niagara and to Beamsville, and I meet like amazing people, and I bring their wines forward, and I'll even like convince clients to go and try my local wine, even if they're anti-local. Not to tell them where it is, and they're like, "Oh, it's local, really?"
Wow.
Yeah, it happens as well. You know, we are Canadians.
I mean,
we don't.
Because
we don't know.
You don't tell me don't bring a
a
Canadian cow, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I can't have Canadian cow. It must be from Argentina only, right? So that would be just silly. I feel like I could talk to you guys for probably hours, just being interested so much in the industry itself, and I think it's food and drink is sort of life to some extent because it creates us, it builds us as humans and what we become. But unfortunately, I think we should wrap up because this is just really the format of our podcast, right? And I'm not trying to be rude at all whatsoever, and I think you guys have been an incredible guest, and you've shared some really incredible experiences with us as to your journey so far and the things that you guys are able to deliver to people in terms of experience and the passion that you bring across as well. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you, maybe like what's available on social media, how do they how can they reach out to you, how far in advance are you booked, and like when are you taking bookings, just to kind of give you the platform to speak about your brand a little bit as well.
So there's the website, obviously, chefsomm.ca.
Okay.
It's like Chef Somm, the two words. Then we have on social media, I concentrate myself mostly on Twitter. Instagram.
Right.
So on Instagram you have, if you like the wine better, then you should follow Rebecca.
Okay.
Which is her name on Instagram is Somm Selects.
Okay.
And do not confuse it with Somm Select without the S at the end, because that's a whole different person.
Which are great as well.
Which are great as well.
Right.
By the way.
Follow them as well.
Follow them too if you like
follow
one.
the S at the end. Yeah.
And then you have chef_Somm, which is me. So we try to give the two edges of it, and we're very, I'd say, as far as it goes, like it's food and then our politics and everything else. So everything is on there. It's like my even in my bio it says that if you're not political, then you're privileged. So it's our life stories. It's like we invite people into our life, because I think that if anybody has a problem with my gender or LGBTQ politics, they're probably gonna not like my philosophy and my food.
Sure.
So yeah, that's how to get us. Bookings, if I'm free in 2 days, I'll book you. Normally our Saturdays are getting like snapped.
Yeah, Saturdays you need to book very quickly.
Probably a month and a half ahead.
Too,
Sure.
Fridays, Saturdays, the rest of the week, probably 2 days notice would be enough. It's like, mind you that we need to write a menu for you, so
of course, yeah.
give me a few minutes. And I need to order animals and everything. It's like, it all depends on how you want the experience to go. So if you want the experience to be centered around me and to trust me mostly, then yeah, I can do it. It's like I can write a menu in for tomorrow and order everything. It's like I'll center the menu on, like, I'll call my butcher. It's like, what do you have? Because otherwise we need to kill something for it, right? Or age something for it.
Sure.
So otherwise, it's like that's the two formats. That's as far as bookings.
Yeah, and the thing is that when you call us, you get us. Like you're not gonna get a different chef or a different sommelier, and that's our uniqueness.
It's always the two of you present.
It's always the two of us.
You're probably talking to Rebecca.
Other companies, when you go to them, they have like a list of all kind of chefs, so they will call someone. So you do not really know what you're getting. In our case, you get both of us guaranteed. That's why Saturdays, for example, you really need to book ahead of time.
Because I can't send you another chef in Somm.
Or have some flexibility when it comes to the date, so we'll find time that works for both of us, because we can do only one event a night.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because you have to concentrate all your energy on that.
Exactly.
Then,
so it's very specific for you, that experience. Yeah.
And then let me just ask you a couple of just very short, simple questions.
Yeah.
So let's say 3 of most affordable wines that taste amazing, maybe that are local, since we're talking about supporting local. Does anything comes to your mind?
Back 10 cellar Chardonnay. If you like some oakiness in Chardonnay, actually the winemaker is using Canadian oak, which is
nice.
very interesting. Cuvée Catherine, sparkling rosé from Henry of Pelham. I think they're doing a beautiful job on sparkling wine. And Kew Vineyards, Rosalie, and their other sparkling wines are really beautiful as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. And what about, I wanted to ask you, where do you shop for your wine? Who's your butcher?
My butcher is in Kill Dundas. His name is Alam. He's the shop is Gomitz. He's very... Don't come with pragmatism to him. Come with, I want to do this,
right?
And he will consult and find you the cut. So it's a butcher shop that is very, very different than your usual. There's no like pre-packed stuff on there. It's like he has some display,
sure,
but in most cases he will just run off to the fridge and cut you a fresh.
What's the best meat that he has? What would you recommend trying?
Best.
No, okay. It's always different.
It's all a matter of what you want today and what you are cooking. So, I mean.
And what about vegetables? Where do you source your vegetables?
I have a few grocers.
Okay,
so
fair enough. Okay. And any last thoughts at all that you wanted to add? Just out of curiosity? No. I think we're good.
Know what you eat.
Know what you eat. That's probably the strongest message we've
Know
had.
what you drink as well. And ask questions all the time. And take advantage of, like, when you come across professionals, ask them questions. Know your food, know your wine. Like, try to figure it out, even though it's a very marketing kind of industry, unfortunately.
Sure.
And as for like sommeliers and personal chefs, like up and coming, any like last piece of advice for them?
How to get into this industry and just become successful?
Good luck. No.
Good luck. I like that.
You gotta make sure you really love it. You have to make sure it's almost an addiction. Because if it's not, it's gonna break you down, and you might as well do something else. Because this is to succeed. As there's so many sommeliers that have been sommeliers for 2 years and 3 years, and you need to, as a sommelier, like, there may be 5 head sommeliers in the city. So it's either push for that or create your own niche. But figure out how to make money of it, because like many times you won't make that much money. So really try to figure out the financial aspect of it, so you can actually make a living of it.
As far as chefs, I can give you. I used to when I was a sound engineer, I used to teach at the college, and my first lecture on the first time that I met a class would be, guys, if any of you can do anything else in their lives, run.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a work of passion. It's most days like it's very rewarding if you're passionate about it, but there are so many pitfalls and days of depression and days of like you won't see the sun and you won't see anything, and it's demanding, and you cut yourself and you burn yourself, and if you don't love it, and no, if you like cooking one pot of rice, host family members once a week. I mean, seriously. It's understanding the mechanics of doing what we do. I mean, and that it's not going to be about you and your passion. It is, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's like, you know, it's doing something professionally and doing it as a hobby are 2 different things. So if you just like cooking, keep it as a hobby. It's a great hobby. It's fun. As a profession, it changes a bit, but before you run away and go to school, go work in the kitchen, go wash dishes for a month, see what it looks like, immerse yourself in it. If you still like it, then take the money and start learning or whatever you need to do on getting there. But test the waters first.
Yeah, check that you love it. That's the most important thing. And then you have to do lots of things for free. You can't escape that. Things that will give you promotion instead. You need to spread the word about this is who I am. Because I checked when I was young, I was thinking, okay, who are the most successful sommeliers that I know and what makes them successful? And it comes down to their personality. You know, so that's the thing. Like you gotta focus on that and spread that personality around, and then you'll have a name. Without having a name,
And
I
keep
think
it.
as a chef or as a sommelier, like you won't be extra successful. You need to have the name around, especially if you're self-employed.